Here we go. It's Friday night. It is currently 7:53, almost 8 o'clock on Friday, January 15th. My name is Garrett Sims. You know what this is. It's podcast with me. And before we get things started, I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is a complete entire rant video. If you're not into rants, I understand if you don't want to watch. But I've dedicated this day to just pick out the things. There's 3 things I want to talk about that are very important to me that I feel the need to spread out there because I'm just taking a look at sports and some of the news that has came in and things that are happening. I just want to lay it down. I want to bulldoze it. I want to break it down for you. So we're going to go into total complete rant mode. Before I say anything, it's been a nice little head coaching day for the NFL. We figured out a lot of things. Arthur Smith, I think it is, from Titans, he will go to Falcons. Robert Saleh, make history, man. First Muslim head coach. He's going to the New York Jets. Awesome pickup for them. I think that's going to be very good. We've seen Urban Meyer. He signed with the Jags. I think Jason Garrett is going to go to the Chargers from what I hear. I don't know about Brian Daboll from the Bills. He could be a candidate too, but because they're in playoff contention right now, I think that's why they're still balancing between Jason Garrett and him. One of the things I want to talk about, staying on the topic of the NFL, is there's been a statement. It's been around for many and many of decades when it comes to sports, and even past sports. If you talk the talk, you can talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk with it. And there's so many players and there's so many different athletes that can use that slogan and be totally fine. An example, that's Jalen Ramsey. That dude could pick any wide receiver and say, listen, I'm going to shut you down. There's nothing you can do about it. And guess what? He'll do it. There's no question in my mind. Look at what he did against D-Hop, DK, and various wide receivers he faced throughout the entire year. They didn't do anything. Along with those people, you could say, along with T.O. and Randy Moss and Chad Ochocinco, those dudes could talk it, and they could back it up. Right now, Baker Mayfield, he's talking the talk, he's walking the walk, and I have no problem with that. But when you're a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you were 11-0, and in your last 6 games, you could only win 1, you got sent home early to the Browns, and now you're sitting on the postseason couch. And if that wasn't humble pie enough to lose to the Browns at your place in the playoffs when you should have won, you were a huge favorite after only losing by 2 points last week, you still feel the need to talk and talk and talk. When does it set in for Juju and Chase Claypool that maybe the reason that they started performing poorly is that they decided that we're going to be TikTok stars instead of spending the extra hour at practice, catching balls, running routes, learning, writing things down in a notebook. And I mean, absolutely, like, I know that they probably study. They study a lot harder than most players in the NFL because of who they play for. They play for Mike Tomlin. But my point is, I have no problem with it. You can dance on all the logos you want, but win games. Win the games. Eric Ebron threw out something. The NFL better give us a nice fancy hotel when we make it to the Super Bowl. Mr. Ebron, where are you at now? What hotel? Because it's not the hotel to the Super Bowl. It's the hotel you're staying in because you got to pack up and leave Pittsburgh. So I don't want there to be no misconception that I hate players when they get arrogant. No, I don't. But when you can back it up, there's no problem. Juju is going to be a free agent after this year. And do you really think Pittsburgh's like, oh, we got to bring him back? I mean, yeah, I think they do. But do you think they want to deal with another Antonio Brown situation? Because that's where they're heading. Juju's seen it firsthand. He's seen what Antonio Brown did. He saw that Antonio Brown couldn't get away from the media. All he could do was post on media and divide his team and divide himself from his team, which led to his ultimate demise. And here you go doing the same thing. Do you not learn? It's one thing if they had said after the season, like, listen, we're done. We're not going to trash talk anymore. We're going to move on from this. We're going to get back to work and we're going to work harder. But instead of working harder, you decide to call out the Browns. Say they're going to get clapped. Come on, guys. You're professional athletes. This isn't college. It's not what it is. You can't just, you're not a Power 5 team anymore. Facing some little itty bitty team in the ACC or SEC. Listen, that's not what it is. You're facing NFL teams that take words that you say like that and they twist them because they want to beat you. They don't want you dancing on their logos. There were a lot of analysts that said, hey, man, we're cool with it. It means nothing. Do you think an NFL player is motivated by that? No. They said no. They said there's no way they're motivated by that. Well, I disagree. If somebody comes into your house and disrespects your stuff, you think they're going to be okay with that? Hell no. And I've seen so many analysts just acting like it's no big deal because it is a big deal. That's walking into your house with their dirty feet and stomping it all over your carpet. I wouldn't want that. I don't think anybody would. So, of course, Josh Allen took that personally. Of course, Jesse Bates took that personally and Von Bell. You don't think they didn't? No, I'm not saying that that was every bit of motivation. But it had to be pretty damn good motivation if you have Ryan Finley at quarterback and you can beat him. It's just like, come on. Come on, Pittsburgh. You're better than that. And I like watching Pittsburgh succeed. I think they got one of the best coaches in the NFL. Mike Tomlin's a top 5 coach, but Mike Tomlin can't overcome players that want to TikTok harder than they can practice harder. You know what I mean? They won't practice as hard as what they will do on social media. And that's hard. And we even seen it. Mike Tomlin was told, hey, man, like this is happening. He said, you know what, I'll talk to Juju about it. It stopped. But it didn't stop their mouths. You're not going to win being a dramatic, dysfunctional team. That's not what the Rooneys are. That's not what Mike Tomlin's about. That's not the whole motto of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, to me, has always been a nitty-gritty group of physical, rough players that were going to destroy you on defense and had enough playmakers on offense to just win. And now we're too worried about what's going to come out of their mouths and not how they're going to perform. So my boldest prediction is I think they let Juju go. And there's a whole dramatic thing going on about them. You know, is Juju going to stay? Is he going to leave? Does he want out? He wants to go to a big market. Pat McAfee, born and raised in Pittsburgh, big Steelers fan. He's probably one of my favorite people to listen to. He's 100% real. And even Juju's getting into a beef with him over the silliest thing. McAfee just said what any other podcaster would say. Like, hey, man, we heard reports he might want to go to a bigger market. Juju comes in and says, no, that's not what I said. How dare you put those words in my mouth? Juju, grow up. People are going to say things. People are going to say things that aren't true. You're being dramatic. And that's not what Pittsburgh's about. You're digging yourself the hole Antonio Brown did. Now, the only thing I'll say about Juju that's different from Antonio Brown, Juju is a good guy. He's 100% outside of the football field and away from the social media. The dude's a class act. I mean, I have never met a player that has done so much for a community and so much to give back than he has. So he's a good guy. And he's a good football player. He's just getting distracted. When you get distracted, it's the worst thing that can happen. Your team can get distracted. You know, your team can only overcome so much distraction. Like, weeks 11-0, they could. Then you start to find out the distractions got worse, the drama got bigger, and you see what happens. And that's my note on the Steelers. Now, today, a couple baseball moves happened. And like I said, as you guys know, I'm a Kansas City fan. I love my Chiefs, and I love my Royals. But it's just been so gosh dang hard, man, to watch baseball. Because they got a commissioner that is probably the most dysfunctional commissioner out of all the sports. And I think if you look at the history, probably one of the worst. I'd put him at the top of my list for worst. Because I wasn't alive for Mr. Rozelle, and I heard he was, I wasn't alive for that, so I have no comment on that. I just mean the ones that I've lived through, he has been the absolute worst. He's too worried about pace of play. Listen, I don't care how long a baseball game takes. You're not a true fan if you're like, oh, this game's too long, this game's too boring. You're not a true baseball fan. Don't watch. He's too worried about pace of play instead of making it fair for all teams to compete. There are small market teams that can't compete with the Yankees, that can't compete with the Dodgers, can't compete with the Padres, the Phillies, sometimes San Francisco. And that's the problem. Tampa Bay faced the Dodgers last year, and Tampa Bay just got lucky. Same way the Royals did. I don't know how the Royals did it. By all means, they shouldn't have won. Shouldn't even been in the playoffs. But you're starting to see with the Yankees, they can sign DJ LeMahieu. They can afford Giancarlo Stanton. They can afford Garrett Cole. Now they're signing Corey Kluber. They still have Tanaka, the Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge. Who can't they afford? Nobody. They can't. It's hard. San Diego Padres went out and they got a load of players. They went out and got Blake Snell. They went out. They got Clevenger. They signed some guys. I mean, it's just hard to compete. There has to be a point where Manfred stops saying, like, we got to stop worrying about pace of play and worrying about should we shift or should we not. Who cares about shifts? I'm concerned about who's going to suck in baseball. And it's not like in football, you get the number 1 overall pick and you can just draft a game changer. That's not what it's like. You draft a player that may be good, may not. You don't know. And even if so, it's going to take 3 years before he's worth anything. So my message is to baseball, how about you stop worrying about pace of play and other stupid stuff? And how about you focus on a cap salary? How about max contracts? Things that keep the checks and balances in order. Because it's becoming ridiculous. The White Sox are going to be good. The Yankees are going to be good. The Astros. And the Astros situation was managed very poorly. So come on. I mean, this is just ridiculous. It's going to be a matter of time before Christian Yelich wants out because he's in a small market team that can't afford him to win anything. Just ridiculous. I mean, and that's why I can't. And I bet you there's 1,000 others that are like, you just don't love the game that much. It's just because your team doesn't know how to buy and spend stuff. And I get that. That's logical points. But at the end of the day, you know who's going to win each division. Sometimes you get a lucky year. Oh, the Reds make it to the playoffs. But they're going to lose to the Braves. The Braves are just stacked. The Braves beat the Reds. Guess what? They got to face the Dodgers. Nobody wants to face the Dodgers. It almost seems like to me their money goes on trees because they can find it everywhere. Oh, we want a player. Guess what? We'll get him. They'll trade away their entire farm system and yet still have 20 great prospects. I mean, that's my knock on Manfred. He's just done so little to please the fans. So little. And I have been disappointed since he stepped into the office because always worrying about his pace of play. Not worrying about making it more competitive. I want to see every team have a chance. And yeah, you're going to get teams that aren't good. But it shouldn't be the same teams every year. You know the Orioles are going to be bad. You know the Royals are going to be bad. You know the Tigers are going to be bad. The Cleveland Indians are going to be bad. They just traded away all their players. Look at Tampa Bay. The only way they could stay at least relevant was keeping Blake Snell, and they couldn't do that because they were running out of money. Blake Snell is probably a top 10 pitcher right now. And 5 of those guys are on the Yankees rotation. And yet Tampa Bay just trades him away like he's nothing. You think that's what Tampa Bay wanted to do? No. But they know they can't compete. They can't just go out there and sign whoever they want. This is how baseball works. Small markets have to draft good, and maybe in 4 or 5 years, you may push for a chance to get a title. Royals were the perfect example of it. Farm raised the right guys, got the right pieces around them. They won. Then you can only afford to keep a couple guys around, and then it splits up, and then you're back to being a basement team. That's what's going to happen to Tampa Bay. No doubt in my mind. They're not going to be competitive this year. They're coming off a World Series where they went in and should build upon that, but because we don't have a salary cap, nothing they can do. And it absolutely sickens me as a baseball fan. It does. And I just can't. You don't understand. That's why I don't watch baseball. Maybe every now and again I do because I love the Royals announcers. Ryan Lefevre and Rex Hudler, those guys make the games bearable. And having Salvador Perez and Whit Merrifield and Alberto Mondesi makes it fun. But you still know you're going to lose. And it just sucks. Fix the game, Manfred. That's my message. Fix the game. Stop doing robo-umps and working on pace of play. And, they hired Theo Epstein to come in and try to make the game more fun. I can tell you how you can make it more fun. Make it like the NBA. Make it like the NFL. Every game, you don't know who's going to win. And occasionally you get the best team versus the worst team, but every other game should be solid. Look at the NFL. A 10-6 team didn't make the playoffs. It's just one of those moments where you got to shake your head. And, I mean, if you're the Yankees right now, you got to be happy because you just got 2 huge signings. 2 really, really good signings. And they may not even win a championship. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, you know what? We don't have enough guys. We're going to go spend more money and more money and more money. I mean, it's just really to see who has more money at this point. I'm going to move off that because I think I'm starting to repeat myself a little bit. I'm going to go into my last thing that I want to talk about before we finish up with our food for thought. And it's boxing. And I think it's hilarious. I mean, it really seems nowadays, if you go down to your local sporting goods store, and I've said this before, if you go down to your local sporting goods store and buy a pair of boxing gloves, you can take on about anybody. I enjoy boxing for fun, but I know, I would say between my friends, like, oh, maybe I could beat Jake Paul. I could beat Floyd Mayweather. I could beat Conor McGregor. But in reality, you really think I'm going to beat one of those guys? No, we say that. You say that for fun. But then there's the delusional people. Jake and Logan Paul. And I hope this goes viral. I don't really care. They say whatever you put on the internet, it's out there for everybody to see. So I hope everybody does see it because that'd be great for me. But how delusional do you have to be to call out Conor McGregor? I mean, I'm sorry. There's a list of people that I would not fight, and Conor McGregor is probably in the top 5. Even if I'm a professional boxer and I'm like 25-25, I still ain't boxing him. It's just ridiculous. Logan and Mayweather are going to fight, and Mayweather being one of the best defensive boxers in the history of the sport, and Logan Paul being a guy that lost to KSI. I mean, imagine that. You can get a fight with a great if you lose to KSI, a British YouTuber. You know, and I'm not 100% sure on all this because I don't follow it. I just see it like you guys do on the stories and on Instagram and on Snapchat and stuff like that. You know, Dana White actually got so mad at Jake Paul. He said, listen, you want to talk the talk. He said, how about you walk it? We'll put you up against Amanda Nunes. And I laughed. You want to know why I laughed? I chuckled. I chuckled at the idea because I said Jake Paul is going to get his butt whooped. I don't know if anybody's watched Nunes fight. My God, she's an animal. I mean, Jake Paul would probably lose in that fight. I don't care who you are, what you are not winning against her. No way. You know, and it would be obviously in the octagon. I mean, that I'd pay money to watch that. I would pay hundreds of dollars to see that on pay-per-view. I don't know if Jake Paul will do it. Probably won't. You know, probably a lot of issues with that anyway. But, you know, and I was reading something today. I guess there's a guy that McGregor kind of spars with, and that might be the guy that Jake fights first to see if he can earn his way up to McGregor. And I think this guy's either 15-1 or 15-0-1. Either way, pretty good record for a boxer. I mean, as a young guy. And Jake Paul's 2-0 against guys who aren't even pro. And Jake thinks that he can just beat McGregor. I mean, it comes to the point where it's just like, how delusional can you be? You know, and maybe for him, maybe it's like, oh, maybe I step in the ring, maybe I win, and if I lose, you know, everybody expected it, so it's not that big a deal. Well, if I were McGregor, if I were Mayweather, I'd say, listen, we'll box you, but if we win, you're done, no more. Like, you know, you're just wasting everybody's time. And boxing's one of those weird things where it's not like the NFL. You know, it's not like there's a league, you know, it's a league full of boxers, but you're not facing like 30 of the best boxers in the world. It's who you decide to fight. That's what it boils down to. It's who you decide to fight and the titles you decide to fight for. So that's how I look at it. And, you know, Logan versus Mayweather's coming up. Mayweather is like 50-0-1. I don't think he's ever lost. I think he tied. I mean, that's just he to even accept this fight, I think is insane because I think he wins so easily. Like, I don't even think it'd be worth his time. Like, that's where McGregor's coming from. Like, if you're gonna fight me, I want to make sure that you're worthy of it. Like, if Jake beats this kid, then I'd start saying, you know what, then he deserves a chance. Maybe I'll put a little bit of respect. But dude, you face two people who aren't even boxers. This is just what it boils down to. And I'm sure everybody knows King Garcia. I think his name's King Ryan Garcia. He calls himself the King. I don't know why. The King is Pacquiao. Or maybe even the great Muhammad Ali. I mean, there's so many other guys I would name. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., Pacquiao, I mean, there's just 20 different guys I would name King before I would name him any sort of king. You know, and everybody's like, oh, you know what? He showed a lot of grit in his last fight. Got knocked up and beat a kid. Congratulations. That's boxing for you. You're supposed to get knocked out. You're supposed to get back up. You know? I mean, I get not everything's like the Rocky movies, but comes a point, And, he wants, I read something today, he wants to fight Pacquiao. To pass the torch. I want the great Manny Pacquiao to pass me the torch, one great from another to another. I'm like, really? You're going to call out somebody who's past his prime and probably could fight and still beat you just because you want him to pass this so-called torch? Come on, man. That's just ridiculous. I mean, you got to give him his respect because he's undefeated. But, I'm not a big boxing guy. I just look at the big names and, I was a fan of Muhammad Ali. I watched some of his fights, when I was kind of bored on time or something like that. I was like, me and my dad were talking and be like, oh, you talking about Muhammad Ali. And I would watch some of them, and that dude was an animal. Him, Tyson, Evander Holyfield, like they were animals. And I'm not saying that, the boxers today aren't, because they are. I mean, it takes a lot of determination, motivation to step into a ring with somebody you barely know and try to rip their face off. I mean, that's just. But I mean, I doubt that the Pacquiao thing happens between him and Garcia. But I mean, if it did, if I'm Pacquiao, I'm trying to beat him. I ain't trying to pass no torch. And even if Garcia does beat him, they're like, what do you get out of that? Oh, I beat a way past his prime Pacquiao. Come on, stop it. It's really hard, And I think they're kind of diminishing great fights like Tyson Fury versus Wilder. That was a phenomenal. I watched that. That was awesome. Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson. That was pretty entertaining for the most part. I mean, it wasn't the best thing I've ever saw, but like it was pretty good. And then you see Nate Robinson versus Jake Paul. Like, you're only watching that because you're hoping Jake Paul gets hurt. Like, it just diminishes great fights like Wilder and Fury. And I get they're in different classes and stuff like that. But if Jake Paul really wants to fight somebody, why doesn't he call out Wilder? I mean, why doesn't he call out Fury? He ain't going to call out those two. Ain't man enough to do that, but he'll call out McGregor. Probably because McGregor is the only one that would accept that fight. Not because he's stupid or anything, but because I just feel like he's the type of guy that would love to shut up Jake Paul. And it all goes back to this one thing I talked about. If you're going to talk it, you better walk it. And you better walk it very good. There's a lot of cheap shots being shot at Browns Chiefs this week. And I'm a Chiefs fan and I want them to win, but you can't get on a high horse, especially when you haven't played a football game in about 20 days. And I'm not going to lie, the Browns are hot, but there's even things the Browns have said that I'm shaking my head at. And one of them's Kareem Hunt. Then OBJ chimes in. OBJ is not going to play this game. I'd be surprised if he even takes the trip. And then you got Kareem Hunt, and actually, surprisingly, as far as I'm concerned, Baker hasn't said anything. I think there's a great deal of respect between him and Mahomes. And I think that goes back to their college days. Those two were college legends, and they played one of the greatest college football games of all time. I mean, that thing will go down in history as one of the greatest college football games in all time. But, it all goes back to the last thing I'm going to talk about. We're going to go right into our food for thought. Do you mind? I'm going to ask you a question. Do you mind arrogant players? Do you believe in the slogan, if you talk the talk, you better walk the walk? Do you believe in that? Do you not? I mean, let me know. It gives conversation, gives something to talk about. And I don't have a problem with my players being arrogant if they can back it up. Have no problem with it. Tom Brady, if he could talk all the crap in the world he wanted, because he is so established in his career, it doesn't matter. He could say, you know what? You say, you know what? Every team sucks. I'm going to win. But he's just I think there's a humbleness to him where he's one of the guys, you talk the trash to him and he'll turn it around and he'll turn it into motivation to beat you. So there it is. That's the show for today. I don't have anything to add on to. It was kind of a rant Friday. I won't be back till Monday. Maybe in a certain circumstance where, quickly review like some huge breaking news, but I doubt anything like that's going to happen or make me significantly want to get back on. But I'll see you guys Monday. It's been a great week, our first full week. It's been amazing. I'm glad to everybody that's watched and subscribed. It means a lot to me. And let me know what you want to see more in the future of. If we want to see more talks with Kate, if we want to see more Throwback Thursdays, because I did miss that this week. If you want to see more motivational Mondays, motivational messages, just let me know. It's all what you guys want to do. So as for that, I'm Garrett Sims. This has been the podcast, and I will see you on Monday.